Chapter 9, What's in the Meat? Lee Harding ordered soft chicken tacos at a Mexican restaurant in Pueblo, Colorado. He was 22. His wife, like my student Daniel, worked at Wendy's. They were out to dinner on a Friday night. Pain, diarrhea. Raise your hand if you've ever gotten any sort of stomach virus from fast food. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One time I went to El Torito's for Taco Tuesday. Did I tell you this?
No.
Yeah, don't go to El Torito's for Taco Tuesday and get the chicken. I was sick for 2 days. I wanted to die. And I think that's how this guy felt. E. coli is a big factor if you're eating meat. Sadly, E. coli. There can be traces of E. coli in our meat, and that can make us sick, and it can even be fatal. If it's not diagnosed right away, some doctors will give you the wrong medication, or you might self-medicate the wrong medication and you make your symptoms even worse. Let's fast forward to 196. Much like the human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, responsible for causing AIDS, the E. coli bacterium is a newly emerged pathogen whose spread has been facilitated by recent social and technological advances. E. coli was first isolated in 1982. HIV was discovered the following year. I don't know if you know that. HIV is pretty new. Okay, no one knew about HIV when I was a teenager in junior high. American meatpacking production has never been so centralized. 13 large packing houses now slaughter most of the beef consumed in the United States. So if one of those slaughterhouses gets contaminated beef, obviously it can have a ripple effect on the entire country. Okay, it's a slippery slope. I like at the bottom, he has this quote, bottom of same page 196. Today, the United States government can demand the nationwide recall. What's recall? It's like when you say, okay, we got to stop selling this and we're going to pull it from the shelves. So they'll literally go to the shelves in Target or the grocery store or Walmart and they'll pull it. Okay, Target now has groceries. Okay, today the U.S. government can demand the nationwide recall of defective softball bats, sneakers, stuffed animals, and foam rubber toy cows. But it cannot order a meatpacking company to remove contaminated, potentially lethal ground beef from fast food kitchens and supermarket shelves. Which is sad. And we get a very powerful, simple declarative on 197 at the end. There is SHIT in the meat. That's vulgarity. Hamburger used to be the food for the poor. Okay? People didn't buy hamburger. They bought steaks. They bought pork chops. Okay? They bought a whole chicken and cooked it. They bought filet mignon, sirloin, ribeye. Before World War I, pork had been the most popular meat in the United States. Problem is, sometimes red meat, if undercooked and with traces of bacteria, can lead to E. coli poisoning. One of the first to become ill, this is the bottom of 198, Lauren Beth Rudolph. Ate a hamburger at a San Diego Jack in the Box. I call it Hack in the Box. You ever heard that, Sam? Hack in the Box. Okay. There's Taco Hell. There's Hack in the Box. Okay. We don't have a lot of good choices around here. And it was a week before Christmas. She was admitted to the hospital on Christmas Eve. She died in her mother's arms on December 28th, 1992. She was 6 years old. Okay, remember her for the test. Fast forward again. Other examples. Alex, another 6-year-old, after eating a tainted hamburger, kidney infection, dies. Any, page 201, the top, any tiny uncooked particle of hamburger meat can contain enough of the pathogen to kill you. And it can easily be spread through poor hygiene. On average, an infected person remains contagious for about 2 weeks, though in some cases E. coli has been found in stool samples for 2 to 4 months after an initial illness. So we have to wash our hands, just like COVID. It spreads. The problem begins in today's vast feedlots. I like this analogy at the bottom of 201. A government health official who prefers not to be named compared the sanitary conditions in a modern feedlot to those in a crowded European city during the Middle Ages, when people dumped their chamber pots out the window. Raw sewage ran in the streets, and epidemics raged. Page 202 talks about the mad cow disease. Make sure you know about that. I like this quote at the bottom of 202 from Jerkley. They're designed to eat grass, the cows. That's what they should eat, right? Doesn't that seem natural? Maybe grain. I mean, they have 4 stomachs for a reason, to eat products that have a high cellulose content. They are not designed to eat other animals. Page 203, the increased speed of today's production lines makes the task much more difficult. A single worker at a gut table may eviscerate 60 cattle an hour. So these people have to be the ones who have the most skills, because they're gutting the cow, and if any parts of the lower intestines spill, you're gonna get SHIT in your meat. And the faster the line, the greater their profits, so they want a fast line. Page 204, the day when hamburger meat was ground in the back of a butcher shop out of scraps from 1 or 2 sides of beef are long gone. This is an interesting analogy he makes. To the middle of 204. Like the multiple sex partners that helped spread the AIDS epidemic, the huge admixture of animals in most American ground beef plants has played a crucial role in spreading E. coli. A single fast food hamburger now contains meat from dozens or even hundreds of different cattle. And then he talks about the jungle again. Make sure you know about the book, The Jungle. On 207, the meat packing plants and the fast food chains, they have an answer. Cook the meat. That's their answer. Cook the meat longer. Cook the meat at higher temperatures. It'll cook the bacteria out. Okay, which is not necessarily the best answer. This one guy from Jack in the Box, who was an executive at the top of 208, he claimed that Jack in the Box never received a thorough explanation of why hamburgers needed to be fully cooked. He probably took regular English too in high school. Ironically, now Jack in the Box has made a comeback. They're like the standard for safety. Okay, so if you do eat at Jack in the Box, you know that they're very meticulous with their safety standards and protocols for their meat, because they got such a bad rep years ago and they almost went bankrupt. And you find out on 210, it's funny because they did all these things and all these measures, and everyone else was like, oh, you're making us look bad. And it cost them literally 1 penny per pound more. So it didn't take away from their profits much at all. Okay. On the section called A Lack of Recall, he talks a lot about how the politics of it makes a big difference. On 212, once a company has decided voluntarily to pull contaminated meat from the market, it is under no legal obligation to inform the public or even state health officials that a recall is taking place. So there might be a recall happening at Wendy's or Burger King, and we might not even know about it, and we just keep going there. Okay, like I keep going to Del Taco. They're worried because if you look at the bottom of 212, there's a quote, you know, we're such a litigious society, everybody sues for everything. Okay, if the public knew about it, then everybody with a stomach ache after they ate fast food would try to sue. There's even a story about pieces of glass being found in the meat. Let's fast forward some more. This is a pretty in-depth chapter, so there's a lot. 217, we find out what IBP did when the carcass remained at the slaughterhouse on the hanger too long. Okay, first they would try to spray it. Okay, and the longer it stood on the hook, the more they would spray it. But at the top of 217, they said such carcasses, which sat for longer than 2 hours, IBP's top food safety executive advised, are to be designated for outside non-IBP carcass sale. In other words, the dirtiest meat was to be shipped out and sold for public consumption, but not with an IBP label on it. So that's their answer. We'll just sell it, but not put our logo on it. Scary. Page 218. This is what Eric Schlosser is most concerned about, and I think one of the reasons he wrote the book is because he cares about kids. What kids eat is interesting. And be careful, since we're getting free lunches these days. I know most of you are 17, but you're still considered kids. In this section, he says this one guy was selling tainted meat to the federal government. He'd already been convicted for 2 years earlier on similar charges. At one point, an 11-year-old boy, this is top of 219, became seriously ill in April of 1998 after eating a hamburger at his elementary school in Georgia. It had E. coli. And the company's owner later tried to, and did, commit suicide. I think probably because of guilt, knowing that they were selling tainted meat to school districts in North Carolina and Georgia, U.S. military bases, and prisons. At one point, it says in an 18-month span, they had 171 critical food safety violations. And then he talks about salmonella. So you should know about salmonella. It is an organism, and you probably hear stories like, okay, if we got to cook the chicken longer because we don't want salmonella, and you have to clean your counter. He has a section entitled Your Kitchen Sink. And he says, anyone who brings raw ground beef into his or kitchen today must regard it as a potential biohazard, one that may carry an extremely dangerous microbe, infectious at an extremely low dose. The current high levels of ground beef contamination, combined with the even higher levels of poultry contamination, have led to some bizarre findings. U of A found that you might have more fecal bacteria in your kitchen sink than you do your toilet. That's ironic. And there's some powerful anecdotal or examples at the end of the chapter where he talks about what kids and young people who work at these fast food restaurants do. In May of 2000, 3 teenagers who worked at Burger King in New York were arrested for putting spit, urine, and cleaning products into the food. Apparently they had been tampering with the food at Burger King for 8 months, and it was served to thousands of people. The funny part is many workers, he says, at fast food restaurants would not eat anything at their restaurant unless they made it themselves. Kind of makes you think.